Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 128, July the 10th, 2017, Monday. Yes, it is a Monday. Got some interesting items for you today. Let's take a look at my notes here and review. Oh yes. I'm going to post a link in the description for this particular story that was in the Gateway Pundit. And it's also probably can be found on Circa News, and probably Conservative Journal probably has this as well. But I left a link for you on the Gateway Pundit story, which is reporting that on Saturday, this past Saturday, the New York Times did another hit piece on Trump based on an anonymous tip that Trump insiders met with a Russian lawyer to discuss options for Russia. Now, it appears, according to the Gateway Pundit, that Circa News has investigated this themselves, and they have found that Fusion GPS was the group that organized the meetings. So what they're saying is that the New York Times runs this story, again, based on an anonymous tip that Trump insiders had met with a Russian attorney, a lawyer from Russia, who I assume that they're saying represents either the Russian government or somebody in Russia, banks or whatever, and that they were getting together to discuss options for dealing with Russia. And I assume that they're talking here about sanctions and various other things. And so it's just another example of the New York Times running a story which they used an anonymous source or anonymous tip or whatever without actually investigating the story. And this is why the New York Times is failing. It goes back to my previous video. Their credibility continues to be destroyed. Now, this was not a new story. This is something that had been out there. This has been out there for a long time. This was originally part of, I think, the original assertion that they said that Trump's lawyer, Cohen, met with some Russians. That turned out to be false. They said Manafort met with some Russians or whatever. That turned out to be false. So I think this story is in the same vein, why the New York Times continues to pursue this path based on bad sources and tips from the deep state, which is exactly where Circa News is claiming, because Circa News already investigated this. And this is what you'll read in the Gateway Pundit when Gateway Pundit is reporting that the New York Times is running this story again on Saturday. This is a story that Circa News covered months ago. And that when Circa did the investigation, they found out that this was a setup. This was an operation, first of all, and this is why Circa believes it's tied to the deep state. So what they do is what Circa is suggesting happened, is that the deep state working through, it appears, Fusion GPS gets these individuals who are either literally Russian lawyers or posing as Russian lawyers. They arrange a meeting. Circa is claiming that Fusion GPS did this. Arranged this meeting between Trump people and this Russian lawyer, and then once the meeting occurs, then they leak it. The deep state leaks the fact that this meeting happened, which was a setup to begin with. So they set up this meeting, the deep state, using Fusion GPS. They set up this meeting of fictitious characters, and then once they set up this meeting, it's a trap. Then they leak the story that the meeting happened, and then the New York Times and the Washington Post and everyone else covers it. And then you get this story that the Trump people met with some Russian lawyers connected to so-and-so and so-and-so, when it turns out that in doing their investigation, even the Trump administration admits that once they found themselves in this meeting, they realized that the individuals and the participants had misrepresented who they were and who they worked for. So once the Trump people find themselves in this particular meeting that has been set up by Fusion GPS, working for the deep state as a setup, they realize that they're not dealing with a real situation here. They're realizing that the people that they're dealing with in this particular meeting are not exactly who they say they were or working for who they say they were, in which case they walk away from the meeting or they get out of there or whatever, but the damage is already done. The meeting has happened. Then the leak comes from the deep state about the meeting happening, and then all the liberal media goes about reporting on it, and then Trump and his people have to then explain exactly what happened. But according to Circa News, as is featured in this Gateway Pundit article, which I'll post a link for you, which you can read for yourself, you will see that it all traces back to Fusion GPS setting up the meeting with the fictitious characters, and then the deep state leaking that the meeting happened, and then all the liberal globalist media working overtime to advance the story, probably knowing good and well the entire thing was a setup. This is how the deep state works, folks. This is exactly how they work. So a lot of these stories that we see are not nearly as innocent as they appear on the surface. There are things happening. We know that with the leaks going on, that these players are being brought into association with bad actors, and then the leaks come out about it. And then we find out that the people who are behind setting up these meetings or setting the stage for all these events are part of the deep state. These are setups. And this is what's revealed. So if you want to read that story, just click on the link below the description, and you can read it all right there in the Gateway Pundit. And if you want to follow up on it, I'm sure you can go to Circa and find in their archived articles from probably 2 or 3 months ago where they already sniffed this story out. Has the media ever gone out and corrected this particular story? No. Did the New York Times know when they posted this most recent article on Saturday about the investigation by Circa News? I don't know if they did or not, but they certainly didn't cite it, and they didn't really cite their source, other than saying that it was based on that their story was based on an anonymous tip. Of course, all their stories are based on anonymous tips, none of which ever turn out to be true. And then you find out later that it's not just bad journalism. It's not just them getting stories wrong. No. It's much more devious and insidious than that. These are setups. These are frame-ups. These are all things that are being done to destroy the credibility of the administration and the president personally, as well as the people around him, because they're desperate. The deep state is desperate. What else have we got here? Oh, yes. Hillary Clinton. Even the Democrats want Hillary Clinton to go away, but she just will not go away. So she's recently speaking at a tech conference in California, where she was dressed in one of her standard issue Kim Jong-un dictator pantsuits. She looks like Chairman Mao in her pantsuits with she wears the long thing, I guess, to cover up her fat ass, or the fact that she sometimes has issues with her Depends, which leave behind things that we've all seen and we don't want to see anymore. So she's appearing in her Kim Jong-un uniform, her Chairman Mao uniform, out in California at a tech convention where she suggested that lies were used against her. And she's suggesting that the Democrats, that the Democrats need to start learning how to twist the truth if they're going to start winning elections. Hillary's suggesting that they need to start twisting the truth if they're going to start winning elections, because after all, that's the only possible reason that she could have lost, is that they made up lies about her. They twisted the truth. Hillary Clinton, man oh man, I can't believe that some people around her, the DNC, or of course it's all her people that are in there. I mean, there's nobody apparently who's either got the stones or the backbone or the authority or even the desire to tell Hillary just to shut the hell up and go away. Shut up and go away. I mean, she's under all these investigations. She's not out of the woods by any stretch. And once Christopher Wray gets in there and gets sworn in, which I believe is in about 2 weeks, the hearings will be this month, Christopher Wray will be confirmed. He will be sworn in. He's a white-collar expert on white-collar crime, exactly what the Clintons are mostly involved in with the Clinton Foundation, with the email scandal, which I think is still being percolating there in the Attorney General's office. With the new FBI director, we'll probably have another look at that. Hillary is not out of the woods yet, but she still is out there making headlines and suggesting at this conference that the Democrats need to start lying, learning how to twist the truth if they're going to start winning elections. Yeah, that's why you lost the election, because you didn't tell enough lies. She's a real treat. A real treat. Okay, Twitter just recently conducted some audits, which they do on a regular basis. They actually have a separate company, Twitter Audit, which does nothing more than audit Twitter accounts and try to maintain some credibility, because lots of times people set up fake Twitter accounts to make it look like they have more Twitter supporters and followers than they actually have. So in the most recent audit, Twitter has revealed that CNN has 17 million fake Twitter followers, which means that only 48% of Twitter followers are actually legitimate. Over 50% of Twitter's followers are fake. Hell, their news is fake. Why not their Twitter followers fake? Probably their Facebook followers as well. Everything about CNN is fake. They just can't win, man. You're talking about having a bad couple of weeks. Their ratings fall by 50%. They come in lower and get beat out by Yogi Bear reruns. Then their app falls down to 1 star because that's the lowest rating you can get. At the same time, it's now being revealed that there is dozens and dozens of people who've joined a class action discrimination lawsuit against CNN. Their ratings continue to fall. They're now being even beaten by MSNBC in some time slots. And of course now we find out that half of their followers on Twitter are fake, just like their news. As I mentioned earlier, Trey Gowdy was on Fox News this past Wednesday, and he too is now starting to raise the issue of the DNC server. Now, whether or not as head of that, he's head of 2 committees and on 4 committees that would look into these sorts of things, oversight, intelligence, and that type of thing. So, whether or not Trey Gowdy can actually get his hands on that DNC server, I don't know. It will probably be seen as conflicting with Mueller's investigation. But if you're Trey Gowdy, you have to be wondering why Mr. Mueller has not subpoenaed those servers. And Trey Gowdy is asking that question. He's wondering, too, why the DNC would not allow the servers to be examined by the FBI or by the Department of Homeland Security. And he's now wondering why Mr. Mueller is not interested in looking at those servers, or if he is, why he has not just gone and taken those servers via a subpoena. So there are more and more questions. We had Donald Trump tweeting about that this week. And eventually I think that there's just too many people talking about this. And at some point, I don't know how Mueller is going to be able to avoid looking at those servers, or at least ways asking to look at those servers and being denied, which will only raise even more questions. The blame now seems to have been put on John Podesta as the person. So whether it was Wasserman Schultz or Donna Brazil or John Podesta or Hillary given the word on that, which is what I suspect is true, Hillary's people probably passing the orders down to either Podesta, Wasserman Schultz, or Brazil not to allow those servers to be looked at. That's my guess. And finally, we have Kim.com responding to the Trump tweet about Podesta blocking the FBI from looking at the servers. And it's funny that Kim.com would go on Trump's Twitter and respond by saying, yeah, I know why they wouldn't let him look at the server. It's because of Seth Rich. And I know that Seth Rich was the source of WikiLeaks. So now we have Kim.com commenting on Trump's personal Twitter. I'm sure that Trump saw that, and I'm sure that Trump knows all about Seth Rich. It's just a matter of time before Donald Trump actually brings up the issue of Seth Rich. He hasn't gone there yet, but something tells me he is absolutely going to end up there at some point. So, anyway, that is TowerGate for day 128, July the 10th. Thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to reading your comments. You guys have a good evening, and I'll be back with you tomorrow with more TowerGate. Thanks for watching.